I've got a quick and casual video for you this afternoon because I've got another project. And this one is kind of like a hobby project, but it's really interesting because I got a text message from my brother about 3 days ago, and he and I used to play Warhammer Fantasy Battles all the time. He and I had Warhammer Fantasy Battles armies, and he and I played a lot of that when we were kids. Well, he sent me a text message about 3 days ago saying that he would kind of like to get back into wargaming and playing a Warhammer Fantasy Battle style game. And also he has kids who are just about the same age, maybe slightly older, but just about the same age that we were when we got into playing Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And so he was like, I'd also like to expose my kids to it and try to get them involved. We've tried to get the nephews involved in gaming. Of course, we played Hero Quest together. I did get them some Star Wars Legion starter sets for Christmas. They may have been a little bit too young, but those are over there, so we haven't really got them going yet. So we had the idea that what if we want to play? I mean, we want to play each other. So hey, wouldn't it be fun to play a game together? And while we're doing that, we might as well set this up, make it look nice, and then the kids will be there. The kids will also be watching and be like, oh, so maybe they'll become interested in, hey, what's Dad and Uncle Heath doing? Maybe they will then sort of inspire them to create armies and get into tabletop wargaming like this. So that's kind of interesting. So I've got, like most people, tons of different miniatures around. And so we said, hey, let's try this. First of all, we had to come up with a rule set. So right now, there is no Warhammer Fantasy Battles because they blew up the world and whatever else. So we've been looking around and we said, hey, just what if we tried out Kings of War? So I got Kings of War right here. I just ordered this and it came in yesterday. So I got the Kings of War books. We said, hey, let's just try this one because it seems similar to what Warhammer Fantasy Battle was. And of course, my brother and I have done game design ourselves. And so I want to be sure that when we take this round, we can start this project, this hobby again. Let's start with some type of rule system that a lot of people know and a lot of people enjoy, like maybe Kings of War right here. But I want to be sure that we're flexible enough that as we're playing, we just make the game into what we want it to be and make the rule set what we want it to be. So I got this, and this has got lots of different army lists inside, which was great. Lots of different army lists, although I want us to be flexible there as well, to be able to theme and build out armies the way that we want to. But I said, okay, well, what type of army would I play? Well, I decided, so I'm trying to do this fast, easy, and effective. All right, so that's what this is about. How do you fast and effectively get an army up and running so that you can start playing a game and it looks nice and might, wow nephews, right? To try to get them involved as well. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing I did is I have been collecting miniatures, like most of us, for a long time. And I had wanted to get into a game like this before. And when A Song of Ice and Fire, when Simon put out A Song of Ice and Fire, I wanted to get involved with it. I bought a lot of Song of Ice and Fire miniatures because I'm a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire anyway. And so I got them, but I never really got I had never had anyone to play with. I think I did go over to my brother's house, and I think we played that one time. But again, the nephews were probably a bit too young for it. And they were watching, they were playing, they were rolling dice, but they didn't really grab them, I don't suppose. But I don't think I'd return to that game. I think as far as the rule set goes, although I do have a lot of their miniatures, which that's an advantage of Kings of War, that, well, we can use a whole bunch of miniatures. So I said, well, instead of ordering a bunch of new stuff, let me go and inventory what kind of miniatures I've got and what type of army I could possibly build out of the Kings of War army lists and just see what that is. Well, so last night I went down to the workshop and I just grabbed all of the miniatures that I basically had in storage to lay them out, and I've been organizing them here in the kitchen and the living room for the past 24 hours or whatever to see what's here and then how they might be loosely grouped into units that I could play with Kings of War with. So let me show you what I got. So one thing that I do kind of want to do is to play an undead army, like a major horde undead army. A long time ago, I got these off of Kickstarter, and I've got other miniatures sitting on top of them, but I got from the Forgotten World line from Fireforge. I really like their miniatures. So I got Fireforge Undead. I got Living Dead Warriors, and these still have to be assembled. These are still in the box, and they are on the sprue. So look at these. I think these look pretty cool. I mean, those are pretty good undead to me. I really like the look of those. So I've got undead warriors right here. I've got another box of living dead warriors under here. I got 3 boxes of living dead warriors. So that's a lot for, I guess, to make regiments out of. I got, what's up here? I've got living dead knights. So I think they're pretty cool. I got stuff sitting on top of them. I got Lannister sitting on top of them. I got living dead knights. And then down here, I got living dead peasants, which I think is pretty fun because I wanted a horde of like peasants that had been turned into the undead. And then I've got another box of living dead peasants over here. These are some of my favorite undead ever. When Warhammer was sort of going away, Fantasy Battles was going away, I was like, no, wait a minute. This is the reason I would do an undead army, is because I love these skeletons. So these guys are more like wights or something, but these guys, I love these skeletons. I wish I had more of these. And then I was also looking, I've got these right here, these undead Deadeye walkers from Zombicide to do like some type of missile troops for them with. So I was just trying to come up with what exactly do I have? I've got some type of, I was sent these. These are like zombies of Car Keel. So I got a whole bunch of undead, but they've got to be assembled. They've got to be assembled. And we're trying to get up and playing rather fast. Now you can tell that what I've got on top of these things is I was running out of room, so I was like, well, now these guys are the Lannisters from Simon's A Song of Ice and Fire. So I was like, I've got a human unit right over here that I can use, and I've got a nice core group of Lannisters. I kind of got these guys jumbled because I was trying to take a look. I got Lannister swordsmen, I got Lannister halberdiers, I got crossbowmen. That's a lot of stuff too for a human army. And then also I've got 2 different units of Lannister knights over there. I really like the look of these knights. So no need to go and buy more miniatures because I have so much. So now I go over here and I go to my Northmen. And now you can see I've got 2 different types of Northmen, basically the Starks over here. I've got all of these guys that you're seeing on top. Well, these guys are actually Tullys over here, so they're Tully allies. But I've got all of these, and they've already been primed. So I've sprayed them in blue primer. This was a long time ago when I was like, how do I get these going? So they've just been sitting in a box. I've got Stark swordsmen. I got Stark bowmen. These guys are some kind of rangers over here. I've got Tully cavalry. I've got Stark cavalry over there. Different heroes and stuff. So this is also a core of a whole army ready to go over here. Not to mention, I got all these sprues. All these boxes are filled with sprues. So I've got other Northman cavalry. That's from Fireforge games. Northman warriors right here. Northman warriors in this box here. And this is all, like I said, just sprue after sprue of guys that need assembly. Northman bowmen over there. Northman bowmen. Northman bowmen. So I have 3 units of bowmen. We could be missile troop heavy by the time we get those out, because these are also bowmen over here. Not to mention everything that's sitting on top of it. So I got those guys. I've got these guys. I've got peasants that are not yet undead. So I have a large group of these Fireforge peasants over here that need to be, or that can be, pressed into service as some kind of peasant levy. This is all unsorted A Song of Ice and Fire miniatures. And then over here, as far as undead goes, I had this box of Zombicide special edition, like Kickstarter edition extras. So I've got them. Those guys need to have something done with them. And then also I've got other undead that I was finding. These are the miniatures from Zealot Miniatures. I really love Zealot Miniatures. They're kind of like Hero Quest miniatures, or they're styled, or they're the same kinds of miniatures as the Hero Quest miniatures, but in a new style. Like there's the mummy and stuff. So I put all the undead over here. I was trying to group things together. I got some orcs. A little bit of orc army. These are the zealot that would be with orcs and things. I got goblins here, so I got orcs and goblins as well. Was putting monsters back there. Other Song of Ice and Fire miniatures that are still in their boxes. So I was like, what can I make from this? So what do I need to do in order to get an army going fastest? Well, first of all, we want a smallest minimum viable army. And so my brother and I decided, let's do a 500-point army. And so instead of having to do assembly right now, in order to play fastest, I might as well use the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures that are already assembled. So I was like, what can I build from the Song of Ice and Fire for like 500 points? Like a Northman army? And so I was looking at this. I need like a regiment of shield wall guys, what the Kings of War calls shield walls, which is our basic infantry. Foot guard, which I figure I can use the Tullys for that because they're heavily armored. So they kind of look more like knights. So those could be a unit of foot guard. Whereas these guys over here, they're less armored. So maybe those are our standard infantry over there. And then using smaller troops, Kings of War distinguishes between regiments, which are larger, and troops, which are smaller. Typically, when I think of troops, I think of cavalry. But Tully Knights, so go ahead and put a small unit of Tully Knights together, and then 2 units of those bowmen over there. That means I have to do no assembly, and that would come to 510 points. So they're already assembled, And these guys are already sprayed in a blue primer, because that was my plan years ago for trying to paint these guys quickly, was let me try to use the Army Painter colored primers to go ahead and get the basic color of the army down. I've also gotten, since then, speed paints. I was doing all that before speed painting came along. And I, in fact, just recently got this. This is the Army Painter metallic speed paints. They just came in, was this like 2 days ago? I pre-ordered these. So based on that, based on what I've got, what's the plan to get these guys, or get some army, up and running and playable, fast, and also painted up so it looks kind of impressive on the table? This is tabletop standard. Tabletop standard. But having them painted, I like playing with painted miniatures. And plus, for trying to kind of all the nephews a little bit. I know my brother has a bunch of painted miniatures too. It'd be better if they were painted on the table. Now, this could be tabletop standard. We're not trying to win the golden demon here, but I want them to be painted and I want them to look reasonably good. So what's the strategy then for getting this to happen? So I've got 2 infantry regiments, a shield wall, like shield foot soldiers, and then foot guard as well that I need to get into action, as well as a small unit of Tully Knights and 2 small units of bowmen. I'm thinking there are basically 2 ways to go about this. There is using slap chop and the speed paints. Now, if you were following on the Crafter's Corner, I painted the Hero Quest Barbarian pack and Elf Quest pack using the slap chop method, using the Army Painter speed paints. I had to paint the metals traditionally because the speed paints for the metallics just came out. But I did the slap chop method quite a bit. That's black primer, the 2 types of dry brushes, a medium gray dry brush and then that light white dry brush, and then actually 1 layer of the speed paints. That still takes longer than I would like. I think it's a great technique. I think the slap chop technique is a great technique for using the speed paints. But on the other hand, it took me longer to do 2 layers of dry brushing, because you have to dry brush everything, and then do a base color layer than I kind of would have liked. So I was remembering, now that I've got these guys that are primed in their primary color, so I used this like wolf gray or something like that for the Northmen, and then of course I had primed the Lannisters in red. This was from Army Painter. Maybe that is the easiest way. Prime them, return to this idea. That way I get to experiment with a new idea besides slap chop. Go ahead and prime them in their primary color, and then go on and do 1 pass that is their basic color. Right? So then do a base level, base colors, block all of that in. And then it might be time for a dip or a wash with no additional repaint. Most of the time when I'm doing more traditional painting of the miniatures, what I do is I will prime them, give them all of their base color, then use some type of wash to shade it all, some kind of shade, some kind of wash, and then go back on and then put back on the base colors. That's what I consider a basic paint job. And if you want to go further than that, you put on further levels of highlights. I'm not an expert painter, but that's the technique that I've used to, I think, get some really good results. But when you're painting an army, like, we got to get tons of miniatures going here. I think slap chop may be too slow. So I'm interested in this technique using the colored bases, using the colored primer. So now I'm thinking, go ahead and I need to prime some of these other guys that haven't been primed yet. Have basic paints ready to go, and then give them all a base coat, and then maybe just dip them. Wash them or dip them, and then that's it. I mean, that's your basic, bog standard, tabletop standard wargaming miniature paint job, right? 1 layer of base coat, and then the wash. I want them to look a little bit better than that, though, but here's something that I like about Kings of War. Because when we were playing Warhammer Fantasy Battles, every single miniature in the regiment or in the unit, whatever it is an individual model. So you're trying to remove models when they take injuries and things like that. You don't do that in Kings of War, and I really like that. And with multi-basing, this allows you to mount multiple miniatures on a same larger base. So it doesn't exactly matter how many models are on there. They've got recommended standards. But what matters as far as when you're playing the game with, are you connecting with a charge, or where is the unit actually standing? It's the actual size of the base. And I really like that because that gives you a standard base size. And then you can do like a diorama if you wanted to, with miniatures on that and their exact placement, exactly having to get them to rank up and things. Sometimes getting miniatures to rank up side by side from playing Warhammer Fantasy Battles, when they got their weapons and shields going in all different directions, that could have been rough anyway. So I like the idea that you just take this base and then you put the miniatures on it that you want to represent your regiment or your troop or your horde or whatever, the way that you want it to be. I want to take advantage of this to speed along the painting as well, because I'm thinking that what we do is I've already ordered some laser cut bases for multi-basing from Litco for like regiments and troops. So I think it's after the base coat and then after the wash or the dip, whichever one it ends up being. Then I assemble and rank them up on the multi-base. And then after that, I come through looking at the unit as a whole with an additional layer of base coat. Because that way, if I can't really get to something with a paintbrush, it's not going to be seen anyway. If I'm looking at a unit that's 4 ranks deep, what are you actually looking at? Because the idea here is to have a really great looking unit. A unit that when you look at it from tabletop distance, looks really good from tabletop distance. Not that every single miniature in that unit would hold up to, professional paint job levels. So that means that once I glue them all down, the miniatures that are on the inside, well, they just have the base color and they have the wash on them. So that's fine. But then if I hold the whole unit as a whole, then I can go through and I can spend a little bit more time on the fronts of the front rank guys, because that's probably going to be looked at, the front of the front rank guys. Make sure that looks pretty good. No real reason to go into a lot of detail on the backs of the front ranked guys, or really, underneath like cavalry and the miniatures in general, because they're on a base. You're not going to be holding them up and inspecting them from all different angles. You're looking at them from above. So then like rotate, look at the above, do like crests on helmets, need a little bit of extra paint. And then from behind, like they're my miniatures, I'm probably looking at the rear ranks of the miniatures quite a bit, or the units quite a bit, because those are the ones because they're going toward the enemy away. So then put some paint on the back and really use to my advantage the multi-basing to convey that what I'm trying to paint is a unit that looks good. What do you think? I mean, what is your strategy for trying to get up and running with a game like this? Quickly, effectively, and isn't going to take first of all, tons and tons of money to go and buy new miniatures, because they probably got, like I've got, tons of miniatures already sitting here that can be used and can be put into service. And then get them painted to at least a tabletop standard so that you can enjoy a painted game. What's your technique? What's your strategy? I plan to do other quick and informal kinds of reports about how this process is going and how this technique is working. So we'll see if I'm able to get like 500 points of Northman Starks ready to go for a Kings of War game in reasonably short order. Let me know your techniques for getting armies up and running effectively down in the comments.